Hey everyone, SupaMika here. Since Tokyo Ghoul author Sui Ishida, as many of you have probably heard by now, is working on a new manga, I thought I'd take the time to go back and have a look at Tokyo Ghoul, and discuss some common misconceptions I've seen among fans of the series. Some of these are ones that might seem pretty obvious, while others are a bit more unexpected. There will be spoilers for both Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul RE, so don't watch if you haven't finished watching the anime or reading the manga. Misconception number 1. TOUKA is AYATO'S younger sister. This one is surprisingly common among anime-only viewers, likely due to the anime not really elaborating much on their backstory, and the subtitles translating Kaneki, big sister, as just sister. The idea of an evil older brother is also much more common in anime, so that might have played a part as well. Interestingly, this misconception actually popped up in official media in the PS4 and Steam game Tokyo Ghoul RE Call to Exist. In the story mode for the game, TOUKA is mistakenly referred to as AYATO'S younger sister, although other areas of the game they correctly refer to her as the older sister. Misconception number 2. In Route A, the owl that saved Kaneki and Ayato in Koklia was KUZEN, the manager of Anteku. In episode 5 of Route A, after Amon confronted the berserk half-Kakuja Kaneki, the one-eyed owl appeared, grabbing both Kaneki and Ayato and escaping with them. As most fans are familiar with Eto's Kakuja appearance from the Anteku raid, which is vastly different from her father's Kakuja, many assume that this owl was her father rather than Eto. However, this was actually not the case. Eto's Kakuja had evolved over the years, and in the past it was almost identical to her father's, with a few key differences, such as the hair being green and being larger in size. These features make it clear that it was Eto that showed up there, and we can even see her in this form briefly in the Anteku raid in the anime, before she quickly transformed into the form we're familiar with. The reason the anime chose to have her use her past Kakuja form at first was probably to keep the twist of there being two owls a secret. Something to note about this misconception is it actually popped up in an official game as well, the mobile game Tokyo War Age, where artwork of Eto's old Kakuja form was used for Kuzen, and incidentally, the game, like most Tokyo Ghoul mobile games, has shut down, so you won't be able to play it if you're thinking of doing so. Misconception number 3. HAISE is a separate soul or being inside Kaneki's body. This particular misconception stems from how HAISE's mental state is portrayed in the story. We saw him speaking to Kaneki in his mind, with Kaneki indicating he wants his body back. However, the two of them weren't actually separate beings, rather, the Kaneki we saw in HAISE's mind was a representation of his past ghoul self, and his form changed accordingly from the monstrous half-Kakuja Kaneki to a scared child when HAISE realized that Kaneki wasn't really a bad person. This was similar to how Kaneki in the past had hallucinations of Rize speaking to him, representing his ghoul side at the time. We later saw HAISE among the many versions of Kaneki in his head in the 24th Ward, before he devoured the Ogai and became Dragon, indicating HAISE was just one of Kaneki's many states, the only real difference being his lack of memories. Similarly, in the Tokyo Ghoul manga author's draft for Route A, there's a scene where Kaneki, now having accepted he's a ghoul, speaks to his past black-haired self in a similar manner, likely representing his human side. This suggests that these hallucinations were a way for him to cope with his half-ghoul nature. Misconception number 4. Before ARIMA, someone else held the title of One-Eyed King. In the manga, Eto revealed her true identity to the rest of Aogiri during a speech, and mentioned that in the past, there was a one-eyed ghoul whom the CCG was created to fight against, citing it as an example of one-eyed ghouls being bringers of great change. Later, we learned that there was a one-eyed ghoul called the King of the 24th Ward, or the Underground King, who was from the Washu clan. Many fans assumed all of this referred to the original one-eyed king, someone whom ARIMA inherited the title from, perhaps, and that the skeletal one-eyed king depiction often shown represented this original one-eyed king. However, this likely isn't the case. Not only are the one-eyed ghoul mentioned by Eto and the 24th Ward King probably not the same, as the former was the reason for the CCG's creation, while the latter was known for almost destroying the CCG, neither of them were ever said to hold the title of one-eyed king. The 24th Ward King was mentioned several times, and it was even believed to be alive by many, but not once was there any indication that Kaneki was using his title. In the anime, Furuta referred to the One-Eyed King as someone who has appeared since ancient times, But Eto's response indicated that he didn't actually know anything about the One-Eyed King, and later ARIMA explicitly said that he and Eto invented the One-Eyed King. The skeletal One-Eyed King depiction was also solely used when talking about the One-Eyed King that was believed to be the leader of Aogiri, and was never shown when talking about the Underground King. The other One-Eyed Ghoul was probably just an example of One-Eyed Ghouls bringing great change, rather than Eto referencing the previous king. Misconception number 5. In the manga, Eto cut off KUROIWA'S arm and JUUZOU'S leg. During the Anteku raid, after Kuzen's defeat, Eto arrived and attacked the investigators, severing KUROIWA'S arm and JUUZOU'S leg. At least, that's what many seem to remember happening. However, that's not actually what happened in the manga, as it was actually Kuzen who cut off KUROIWA'S arm and JUUZOU'S leg. The explanation for JUUZOU is likely a simple one. The anime had Eto break his leg, so many fans likely just remembered his leg being cut off in the manga, while forgetting that the one who did it was also different from the anime. In KUROIWA'S case, it's a bit more obvious, but still rather interesting, since later in the manga, during her speech to the members of Aogiri, Eto mentioned she cut off KUROIWA'S arm, getting revenge for him cutting off her own arm years ago, essentially taking credit for what her father did. It's possible this was a mistake on the author's part, but we can't be sure unless he clarifies on the matter, and I personally think she took credit for it since the existence of two one-eyed owls wasn't really widely known. And maybe because her taking KUROIWA'S arm as revenge makes for a better story, since she is an author and all. She was rather bitter towards her father, so it wouldn't really bother her too much. Misconception number 6. HAISE was able to eat human food. This is a very common misconception among fans, since we frequently saw him sitting with the Quink squad as they ate, and he even made food for them. However, he wasn't actually shown to be eating the food himself, and his RC level, despite being on RC suppressants, was still at the level of the ghouls, unlike the Quinks. Most likely, he was given the same food the ghoul prisoners in Kokura were given. As for what that food is, all we know is that Hinami described it as a sort of stew, which I assume was made using dead bodies that the CCG got their hands on. Misconception number 7. Route A is entirely filler, or completely different from the manga. This statement is parroted a lot, and it really just ends up confusing anime-only viewers with regards to Reese since they're told that it follows the manga. While Route A is an alternate route and was advertised as an original story by the author ISHIDA, the actual events in the anime are almost all taken from the manga, with a few significant changes. The CCG side of things in particular is almost all just a direct adaptation of manga events. The main changes are Kaneki being in Aogiri, which doesn't really affect events significantly other than removing certain plot points. The battles from the Kano's lab art occurring in Kokuya instead. Amon vs Kaneki being a little different, with the same outcome. And the season finale, in which most of the dialogue was taken from the manga anyway. The draft that mangaka Ishida drew for the season contained a true original route, with entirely new events and dialogue, but this went largely unused for the most part, likely due to the higher-ups of the studio wanting to stick closer to the manga, as indicated in an AMA thread on Reddit with director Shuhei Morita. A more accurate description of Route A would be that it loosely follows the manga, but makes some changes and skips a lot of plot points, rather than being entirely filler. While it might seem like more of a mouthful, keep in mind that calling it filler has resulted in a lot of anime-only viewers skipping from season 1 to 3 and being even more confused than they would be otherwise. Misconception number 8. Hide was confirmed to be dead at the end of Route A. Prior to the release of the second season of the anime, fans saw the promotional image of Kaneki carrying a body covered with a white sheet and naturally assumed that the person underneath must be dead, as white sheets are used to cover dead bodies usually. Many speculated as to who it could be, with the most common candidates being TOUKA, RISE, and Kaneki's past self. Some probably correctly predicted that it was actually Hide. In the final episode of Route A, Hide, having been injured while looking for Kaneki, collapsed while talking to him, bleeding severely. Anteku was later shown to be on fire, and Kaneki carried him out, covering him with a white sheet, and brought him to the CCG. Well, most people took this to mean Hide was dead. The truth is, what happened to Hide was actually a little more ambiguous than many realize. Hide was actually shown to be alive, right before we saw Kaneki carrying him, reacting to tears falling on his face, which implies that Kaneki was probably taking him to the CCP to be saved. Some arguments against this that I've seen are that Kaneki was walking too slowly for that to be the case, and the white sheet itself. However, keep in mind that Hide was bleeding rather heavily, and running with him would likely not only injure him further, but would probably get them both shot by investigators. A white sheet usually implies death, but in this case it might have just been to protect him from the smoke and cold. In the manga, when Kaneki was removed from Dragon, we saw him being carried in a similar way by Uri wrapped in a sheet, so the sheet itself does not indicate he is dead. Misconception number 9. Manga author Sui Ishida lost interest after Volume 7 of Rape, and rushed the ending because of it. This misconception stems from people misinterpreting his afterword, and not reading the entire thing. The actual statement is that his stance towards the manga changed during Volume 7 of the original manga, and he began to push himself more and more. The idea that he rushed the ending due to lack of interest is also not the case based on his statements. In his notes in the art book Zaki Ri, he indicated that he originally wanted to end the story sometime in Volume 14 of Ri, with a dark, shocking ending, but felt it wouldn't be a good idea, and decided to keep going, with the manga going on for another 6 months. He also stated in his afterword that he enjoyed drawing Tokyo Ghoul in those last 6 months. As for why many readers felt it was rushed, he mentioned that he had informed Weekly Young Jump of when he would end it, and got an extension of 3 more chapters. With further extensions being impossible, he would have had to wrap it up in those chapters, which means if the series ending was rushed, it was simply due to underestimating how many chapters he needed to wrap it up, rather than not having any interest in it. Misconception number 10. The re-anime ignores Rute entirely, and instead continues the original manga story. This one is a very common misconception, and understandably so, as there is a lot to support it. Prior to the re-anime's release, with each manga chapter there was an advertisement for the anime, indicating that people should read the original manga in order to enjoy the anime, and that the original manga would be temporarily available to read online for free. Most speculated that this would mean that the re-anime would just pick up where the manga left off and ignore Rute entirely. In the re-anime, there were several references, including brief flashback shots, to events that were only shown to happen in the original manga, which seemed to confirm that Rute was being ignored. However, in an interview by Manga Tokyo with the re-anime director Toshihiro Watanabe and producer Yoshito Dano, done during the production of the first half of the re-anime, producer Yoshito Dano stated, "Although the new season is the sequel of the previous 2 seasons, the main characters, including the protagonist, have changed drastically." In addition to this, episode 12 showed a flashback of Kaneki's meeting with Hide and Anteku from the Route A finale, while the final episode showed a flashback to Kaneki carrying Hide from that same episode. It's unlikely that these flashbacks were shown by mistake or just reusing footage, as the episode 12 flashback was newly drawn rather than reused, and they had animated footage of ARIMA stabbing Kaneki's eyes from that same episode, which they could have used instead as a flashback in the final episode, instead of showing Kaneki carrying Hide. These flashbacks, and the statement by the producer, indicates that rather than ignoring Rute, they're simply treating the manga's events as having occurred off-screen. This, of course, presents some issues with the anime's continuity, but it should be noted that Rute leaves a lot of events rather vague, with enough gaps in the timeline to somewhat plausibly assume manga events happened off-screen. Well, there really is no way to fit those Route A finale flashbacks into the manga's timeline. We can assume they intended for viewers to fill in the gaps themselves after reading the original manga. I'll make a separate video going into detail on all the inconsistencies, what works, what doesn't, and the general timeline of the anime based on what we've been told. Well, that's all for now. I'd like to give a special thanks to Ken Kamishiro for translating Sui Ishida's afterword. You can find links to the translations and interviews in the description down below. Let me know in the comments what you think of these misconceptions, and if there's anything else you'd like to hear me discuss. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and share it, and subscribe to my channel for future videos. That's about it. See you guys next time. Bye!